I've driven that stretch of highway 100 times. Late at night, windows down. It never scared me. Not once. But that changed the night my car decided to die on me in the middle of nowhere, and I made the mistake of accepting help from a stranger. It was a Monday in October. I was coming back from my cousin's place in rural Tennessee, about 3 hours outside of Nashville. The kind of road where you can drive 15 minutes without seeing another set of headlights. Fields on both sides. No streetlights, just your beams cutting through the dark and whatever they catch in front of you. About an hour into the drive, my dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Oil pressure, battery, engine temperature, all at once. Before I could even process what was happening, the car started losing power. I coasted to the shoulder and killed the engine. Dead silence, not the peaceful kind. I tried restarting it 3 times. Nothing, not even a crank, just a click, then silence. My phone had 2 bars of service, which out there might as well be 0. I called roadside assistance and got through, barely. The woman on the line told me the nearest tow truck was 45 minutes out, maybe an hour. She told me to stay with my vehicle and keep my hazards on. I said okay. I hung up. And then I sat there in the dark, watching my orange hazard lights blink against the asphalt. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. A couple of semis blew past me, shaking the whole car. I had the doors locked. I told myself I was fine. Then a pickup truck slowed down and pulled off about 30 feet ahead of me. I watched it in my rearview mirror. It just sat there, hazards off, engine running. I could see exhaust coming from the tailpipe in the cold air. After maybe 2 minutes, the driver's door opened and a man got out. Big guy. Work boots, jeans, a flannel jacket. He walked toward my car and I cracked the window maybe 2 inches. He was friendly, smiling, said he saw my hazards and wanted to make sure I was okay. I told him I had help on the way, thanked him, said I was fine. He nodded, said good, and then said he was a mechanic and asked if I wanted him to take a look while I waited. I said no thank you. He nodded again, smiled again, and walked back to his truck. But he didn't leave. He just sat there, engine running. I kept watching that truck in my mirror. 5 minutes passed. 10. I called roadside assistance again, and the woman told me the driver was still about 30 minutes out. I told her there was someone parked in front of me, and I wasn't sure about the situation. She told me to stay in my car and keep the doors locked. At the 15-minute mark, the man got out of his truck again. This time he didn't come to my window. He walked around to his truck bed, lowered the tailgate, and started moving things around back there. I couldn't see what he was doing. The angle was wrong. I just saw him moving, his back to me, doing something I couldn't make out. I called my cousin. No answer. I called my brother. No answer. I turned my phone's brightness all the way down so no light was coming through my windows, and I slid lower in my seat. The hazards kept blinking. Orange, dark. Orange, dark. The man came back. This time he didn't go to my window. He went to the back of my car. I heard him behind me, just there at my trunk, not knocking, not saying anything, just present. I still don't know what he was doing. I called 911. The dispatcher answered, and I whispered everything as fast and clearly as I could. She stayed on the line with me, told me a deputy was about 20 minutes out. I asked her what I should do. She said stay calm, stay locked in, keep talking to her. 3 minutes later, the man walked back up to my window. I didn't crack it this time. He knocked on the glass with 2 knuckles and made a rolling motion with his hand, like he wanted me to roll it down. I shook my head. He knocked again. I held up my phone, and I pointed at it, hoping he could see I was on a call with someone official. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked back to his truck, and for the first time since he'd pulled over, he turned his headlights on, full bright, aimed straight back at my car. I couldn't see anything in my mirror, just white light. Then he pulled out and drove away. I sat there shaking for the next 18 minutes until the deputy arrived. I told him everything. He took the description of the truck, got the partial plate I'd managed to read in my mirror, and wrote it all down. He didn't tell me much, but before he left, he said something I haven't been able to shake. He said that stretch of road had come up in reports before, that it wasn't the first time someone broke down out there and had a strange experience. He didn't elaborate. I didn't ask him to. There are things you sense you don't actually want to know. The tow truck came 20 minutes after that. They got my car running by morning. A failed alternator, $40 part, 2 hours of labor. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. I've thought about what that man was doing at the back of my car. I've thought about why he didn't leave. I've thought about that moment he knocked on my glass and stared at me through it. I still drive that highway sometimes. I keep my tank full now. I keep my phone charged, and I don't drive it at night anymore if I can help it. Some lessons you only need to learn once. I want you to think about the last time you drove alone at night. Maybe it was after a late shift or after visiting someone across town. You probably didn't think twice about it. Neither did I. That changed for me on a Tuesday night in November, somewhere between Knoxville and Nashville on Interstate 40. I was heading back home after spending a few days with my sister. Nothing unusual. A drive I'd done plenty of times. I had a full tank, my phone was charged, and the weather was clear. By every measure, it should have been a completely forgettable night. It wasn't. Around mile marker 340, my car just died. No warning lights, no sputtering, no weird sounds leading up to it. 1 second I was doing 70, and the next I was coasting in silence, losing speed fast. I managed to get over to the right shoulder before I lost momentum completely. I sat there for a second just processing what happened. Then I turned the key. Nothing, not even a click. The dashboard was completely dark. I grabbed my phone and called roadside assistance. They told me the wait was about 90 minutes, maybe longer because of where I was located. 90 minutes. I looked out at the highway. Cars were flying past me in the dark, shaking my whole vehicle every time a truck went by. I put my hazards on. Thankfully, those still worked on backup power, and leaned back in my seat to wait. The first 20 minutes or so were fine. I was scrolling through my phone, texting my sister to let her know what happened. Normal stuff. Then my phone battery dropped to 11%, and I realized I'd left my charging cable in my bag in the trunk. I decided to save the battery and put the phone face down. That's when the quiet started to feel different. When you take away the distraction of your phone and you're just sitting alone on a dark interstate shoulder, your brain starts filling in gaps. Every sound becomes something. A car slowing down near you makes your heart rate jump. I kept telling myself I was just anxious. Stranded on a highway at night is uncomfortable for anyone, nothing more than that. Then headlights pulled off the highway behind me. I watched in my rearview mirror as a dark-colored pickup truck parked maybe 30 feet back, close enough that the headlights were hitting my rear window. I sat up straighter, waited to see if someone would get out. Nobody did. The truck just sat there, engine running, lights on. I told myself it was probably someone who stopped to help. People do that. I'd had strangers help me before, but something felt off about the way it was parked. Not right behind me, not far away. Just close enough that I could see the silhouette of the driver, but not clearly enough to make out anything about them. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, young or old. Just a shape behind a windshield. I waited maybe 5 minutes. Nobody got out. Nobody called out to me. The truck didn't move. I picked up my phone and called roadside assistance again, more just to have a voice on the line than anything else. I told them there was a vehicle parked behind me, and I wasn't sure why. The woman on the phone said she'd flag my case as a priority and try to get someone to me faster. She told me to keep my doors locked, which I already had done, and to call 911 if I felt unsafe. That word, unsafe, hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. I called 911 and explained my situation. The dispatcher was calm and professional. She said she'd send a trooper out as soon as one was available, and she asked me to stay on the line. I told her about the truck. She asked if it had moved. I checked my mirror, still there, still running, still just sitting. I want to explain something about those next few minutes, because I think people underestimate how time works when you're genuinely scared. It slows down in a way that's almost physical. Every second stretches. I was watching that mirror like my life depended on it, and honestly, I didn't know if it did or not. Then the truck's door opened. A man got out. He walked up along the passenger side of my car, not the driver's side, and stopped right next to my front passenger window. I turned to look at him, and he was just standing there, hands at his sides, looking straight ahead at the highway. Not at me, not knocking on my window, not waving, just standing there next to my car like he was waiting for a bus. I told the dispatcher what was happening. My voice cracked saying it. She told me not to open my window or my door under any circumstances. She said the trooper was 12 minutes out. The man stood there for almost the entire time. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he wanted. He never knocked, never spoke, never tried to open the door. He just stood next to my car in the dark while I sat there with a 911 dispatcher on the phone, barely breathing. When I finally saw the blue and red lights in my mirror, something in my body just collapsed with relief. The trooper pulled up behind the truck, and I watched through my mirror as the man walked back toward the truck without saying a single word. Not hurrying, not running, just walking calmly like nothing happened. The trooper talked to him for a while, then he came up to my window. I cracked it maybe an inch. He told me the man said he'd stopped because he saw a stranded vehicle and wanted to make sure no one was hurt. He said the man had no warrants, no record, that he seemed cooperative and calm. I asked the trooper why the man had been standing next to my car, without saying anything or knocking. The trooper paused for just a second too long before he answered. He said he didn't know. Then he asked me again if I was all right. I said yes, I wasn't. My car was jump-started by the tow truck that arrived about 20 minutes later. Turned out the battery had just failed suddenly. It happens. Clean mechanical failure. Nothing mysterious about the car itself. I've thought about that night a lot since then. I've turned it over from every angle trying to find the innocent explanation. Maybe he really did just stop to help and had some kind of social issue that made him stand there silently. Maybe he was confused. Maybe I was so scared that I misread everything. But here's the part I keep coming back to. When the trooper walked over to the truck to talk to that man, he had his hand on his belt the whole time. Troopers don't do that for good Samaritans. I drive with a charging cable in the cup holder now. I keep my gas tank above half, and I never, ever put my phone face down when I'm alone. Think back to the last time you were driving alone at night. Dark road, no other cars around, just your headlights cutting through the black. Now imagine those headlights suddenly go out. The engine dies, and your phone shows 1 bar of signal that disappears the second you need it most. That's exactly where this started for me. I was driving back from my cousin's place in rural Virginia, somewhere outside of Stanton on Route 9. It wasn't a highway, just a 2-lane back road cutting through farmland and tree lines so thick they blocked out the moon. I'd taken that road a dozen times before. I knew it well enough that I wasn't worried. I should have been. About 40 minutes into the drive, my car died. No warning light, no sputtering, no coughing engine. I coasted to the gravel shoulder in total darkness and sat there for a second just trying to process what happened. I tried the ignition. Nothing, not even a click. I grabbed my phone. 1 bar. I called AAA and got halfway through giving my location before the call dropped. I tried again. No signal at all now. I stepped out of the car and held the phone up over my head like that was going to do anything. Total darkness. total silence. No houses, no lights anywhere in the distance. Just the sound of the wind moving through the cornfields on both sides of the road. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and tried to think. About 10 minutes passed before I saw headlights coming from the direction I'd come from. I felt relief immediately. I stepped out and waved my arms, and the truck slowed down and pulled over about 30 feet behind me. It was an old Ford pickup, mud-caked. One of the side mirrors held on with duct tape. The man who stepped out was probably in his 60s. Heavy build, work boots, wearing a canvas jacket. He said his name was Earl. He asked what happened. I told him. He walked around the car, looked under the hood without me even asking, and said it sounded like an electrical failure. He said he had a place about 2 miles up the road and that he could call a tow company from there since my phone wasn't working out here. He said the nearest station that could help was back in Stanton, and they'd need a call to even come out this far. I hesitated. I want to be honest about that. Something about the situation made me pause, not because of anything he said or did, just because I was alone and it was dark and he was a stranger. But my options were real simple. Sit in a dead car on a pitch-black road all night, or take help that was right in front of me. I got in his truck. An old rosary hung from the rearview mirror. He didn't talk much, which I actually appreciated. He asked once where I was headed, and I told him Richmond, and he just nodded and said that was a good drive normally. We pulled off Route 9 onto a dirt road I hadn't noticed from the main road. The trees crowded in on both sides. After about half a mile, a house came into view. Farmhouse, older, one light on in the downstairs window. A dog started barking from somewhere, around back the second we pulled up. He unlocked the front door and I followed him in. The inside was cluttered but not dirty. Stacks of farming magazines, a wood-burning stove in the corner, family photos covering one wall. He picked up a landline, an actual landline telephone, and handed it to me. I called AAA, got through immediately. They said the tow truck would be about 90 minutes. Earl made coffee without asking if I wanted any and set a mug on the table in front of me. I thanked him. He sat across from me and we didn't talk much. He watched the news on a small TV with the volume low. About 20 minutes in, I heard a car slow down on the dirt road outside. Earl looked up at the window. The car didn't pull in. It just idled there for a moment. Then it moved on. Earl's expression didn't change, but he stood up, walked to the window, and looked out for a long few seconds before sitting back down. I asked him if everything was okay. He said probably nothing. Another 20 minutes passed. Then we heard it again, the same sound. A car moving slow on that dirt road, slowing near the house, idling, then leaving. This time Earl didn't sit back down. He went to a cabinet near the back door, and when he came back, he was carrying a shotgun. He set it against the wall beside his chair and sat down like nothing had changed. My heart was going fast. I asked him what was going on. He was quiet for a second. Then he said there'd been some trouble in the area over the past few weeks. He said a few of the farms nearby had been broken into. Not robbed, exactly, more like someone had been going through things. Looking for something, maybe. One of his neighbors had found a man hiding in his barn 3 nights before. Nobody they recognized. He said it had been quiet the past few days. He'd thought it was done. He didn't say anything else. He just sat there with that shotgun leaning against the wall next to him and his coffee going cold in front of him. I sat at that table for the longest 90 minutes of my life. When the tow truck finally called the landline to say they were at my car on Route 9, I have never moved so fast. Earl drove me back to the road without a word. When I got out at my car, I turned back to thank him. He just nodded and said to drive safe. Then he sat there in that truck on the shoulder of Route 9 and didn't leave until the tow truck driver had my car hooked up and I was in the cab heading back towards Stanton. I never found out who was driving that car on his road. I never found out if it was connected to the barn incident, or if it was just someone turning around in the dark. I don't know if Earl ever had any more trouble. What I do know is that a dead car, a stranger's kindness, and whatever was circling that house in the dark all happened to me on the same night. And sometimes when I'm driving alone, especially on quiet back roads, I think about what might have happened if Earl hadn't come along. And then I think about what was circling in the dark, while I was sitting inside that farmhouse thinking I was safe. And that's the part that still keeps me up at night. If this video had you second-guessing that next late-night drive or thinking twice before pulling over on an empty road, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new here. Drop a comment below and tell me which story got under your skin the most. I read every single one. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.